Recognizing the member from Peace River North.
Thanks, Chair. And as someone who rarely travels the ferry system, I second his motion on the car alarms. Thanks to my colleague for allowing me just a couple of minutes. I feel like I'm on my annual pilgrimage to budget estimates to talk about the Taylor Bridge in the Peace Country, which is why I'm here right now. Is again, I can talk from experience. Just last week, I had an appointment in Dawson Creek, and it was on my way and. Middle of the afternoon, which is rare, but there I am stuck waiting for a fair good chunk of time while maintenance is being completed on the Taylor Bridge. I remember just, not so many years ago, it was annual maintenance on the Taylor Bridge, then it went to monthly maintenance on the Taylor Bridge. Now it seems to be almost a weekly maintenance on the Taylor Bridge. 2017, when I was first elected, I got a report. Basically, the gist of the report was basically saying that the bridge was at its end of life in 2017. We know that the deck is failing. There's more welding rod in that metal deck than there is original steel. And it is the one thing that my office gets day after day after day, every time I'm out in the community, out in the public, is people asking, the bridge needs to be replaced. We know the bridge needs to be replaced, but it's not in the 10-year capital. So my question to the minister is, I know that there's been studies done. I know that there's been some community engagement. I know there's been some a little bit of engineering work on the ground, underneath the water and such. But where are we at on getting this bridge into its next steps, which is planning for a new bridge across the Peace River?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the member for making the time to come down here. I would have been very disappointed to not see this member who did give a public heads up that we would be engaging in this, which is good. As he knows, because he's helped solicit his constituents to participate in it, we have had a significant engagement on the replacement, the future of the Taylor Bridge. Phase one was the summer of 2021, and that was just to get a sense of overall feedback from users, get a sense of the scale and scope of what might be involved. Then we entered phase two engagement, which put on the table 5 high-level concepts. There was a bridge users group created that had a number of elected officials from the regional district and the town of Taylor and others, and they completed their work at the end of last year. Our government to date has spent about $20 million, in excess of $20 million, doing due diligence on what is a very difficult area to do construction in. And I know the member knows that it's just, not too far away from Site C. Got unstable shale formations that are part of the river and embankments that connect up the two ridges here. And I think we've drilled something like 30 boreholes now, some of them up to 110 meters in depth. Some of them are in river. So the costs add up pretty quickly to do that kind of extensive geotechnical investigation, but they're necessary to see what kind of engineering is going to be required to do that. We're fully conscious that in 1958 an abutment became unstable and was part of a previous iteration of the bridge. And we know the age of this bridge and the welding problems that he speaks of. Not a lot of bridges built this way with that kind of grading as the surface for the bridge. And I fully appreciate that when we do have to do ongoing maintenance and repairs, that it does impede traffic and either make it single lane alternating or result in some bridge closures. We've obviously consult with the community on scheduling that to make it as the least inconvenient as possible, and doing that work at a time of the day or night when it's best done. The last thing I'll say, and he may have another question here though, is that I have had a number of discussions with Ottawa, who doesn't necessarily know a lot about the community that this member represents, but we've had a lot of discussions about national trade corridors, of which BC is, the most important gateway, and interprovincial connections, of which the Taylor Bridge is very important. The population of the two communities, and the number of communities that are served on either side of this bridge may be small in terms of BC's overall 5.4 million people, but the economic impact and value of this bridge in terms of serving a connection between Alberta and BC, in terms of having workforce and commercial traffic that supports the oil and gas sector, as well as other economic actors in the Peace region, is of immense value. The federal government receives significant royalties and tax returns from it. And we pleaded with them to create infrastructure programs that say, you need to basically repair aged infrastructure that is coming due. And I know that there was a big discussion in the United States, and President Biden, I think to his credit, has shaped a number of recovery bills that invest money in to address things they saw. I think in Cleveland there was an absolute bridge collapse, like deferred maintenance and problematic aged infrastructure. Now, we assess the condition of all of our bridges routinely. We keep them safe and operable. When we say, a piece of infrastructure is reaching its end of life, that can be, 5 to 30 years. And I don't know the assessment around the Taylor Bridge, but to go back to that conversation, I think Ottawa acknowledges that, places like Northern Ontario, places like Northern British Columbia, Northern Alberta, provide a significant portion of, through mining and oil and gas, et cetera, are a significant part of the overall national GDP, and that make Canada a mining and energy major producer on the world market. And so I would ask, maybe we can join efforts with his MP and others to continue to, and his mayors, to continue to see if we can get some recognition from Ottawa for that. I think we've gained some understanding from Ottawa with both the bureaucracy and the elected officials there, but bottom line is this: it's going to be a very expensive project. It's one that we know we face and are going to have to do, and that's why we're spending significant, tens of millions of dollars to figure out what the engineering is going to look like. But I think we do need a funding contribution agreement from Ottawa, partly because they benefit significantly from it, but also there's an obligation in terms of nation building to keep our provinces connected and be part of, recognize that there are national trade corridors of significance all over BC.
Member.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Minister, for that. And certainly appreciate the understanding that the trade that happens, oil and gas, forestry, farming, so much grain goes across that bridge. And I think a key part of it is, speaking of corridors, of course, it's the major route to Alaska, major route to the Yukon. So maybe we talk to President Biden as well. Maybe he'll throw in some dollars and support that bridge. But I have worked closely with our member of parliament up there. I know that he has brought this up also into Ottawa, so I'm sure there's conversations there. I will take you up on your offer to work together with it, with you, as whatever we can do to advocate with Ottawa, whatever that looks like. All the local mayors are on board, so don't worry about that. So it's just a matter of how we come up with this plan. So my final question is, actually my first question is, any idea of a timeline that we could be looking at, before we can get some sort of time frame laid out on when this bridge might come to fruition?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what I can say to the member is that there's field work that's ongoing, getting closer and closer to nearing completion. So there'll be likely more bills come due on the geotechnical side, in addition to what we've spent. And that, of course, for all the reasons we've discussed this afternoon, are critically important to getting to informing the engineering work and getting a handle on what, high-level costs look like, what the best options are, and those sorts of things. So that's not a precise timeline, and I'm sorry to say that to the member, but it does point to the fact that there is some work that's coming good and will inform some preliminary considerations that are important for how we engineer what is certainly going to be a very complicated project.